Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So I'm sure that you have seen the news. We've had a crazy weekend when Iran attacked Israel with like 300 plus drones and some ballistic missiles. And this actually happened. I had Scott O on my Rocket Lab Weekly and we were having a blast, and I could see in the comment section that some people wrote like Iran attacked Israel, and I was like, what the heck is this? And we couldn't even comment on it because it was breaking as we had Rocket Lab Weekly. Luckily, we have had more than a day now to react and take in what has happened. And I want to share my thoughts with you on what is happening and what this is going to do to Palantir and Rocket Lab. Those are basically 50% of my portfolio, and I know a lot of you also have this question. I've done quite some research. I want to show you a 4-minute clip of a guy that I think has fantastic commentary about what's going on in the Middle East. I'm going to also link his video in the description box below and his channel if you want to check him out. I think he will provide very good clarity on what is happening and why. It's a 3+ minute clip, and then I'm going to go into Palantir and then Rocket Lab. So please make sure that you're subscribed, and let's begin the video.
All right, what's going on, everyone? So we had a pretty significant event overnight where, for the first time in history, Iran conducted a direct attack on Israel. Now, this is a dynamic situation. There's constantly new information flowing in. So I'm going to talk about what we know, run through a couple relevant statements from the associated parties, and then talk about what this might mean going forward. But first and foremost, I want to get this out of the way because I feel like it's important. There's a lot of fear-mongering going on around any major event like this. I do not believe that we are on the verge of World War III. I do not believe that we are on the verge of having a significant number of U.S. troops on the ground directly engaged in any sort of war with Iran. This certainly is escalation. It's a step in the wrong direction, but we still have a long ways to go, again, before the United States is directly involved in any large-scale war in the Middle East. So rest easy. That said, this is a very significant step and could lead to broader escalation across the Middle East. Now, a little background, the reason that this attack was carried out, a lot of people saw it coming. There was speculation that it could have happened any day for about a week now. The reason for that is back on April 1st, Israel carried out, well, technically they never claimed responsibility for it, but everybody understands that it was in all likelihood Israel, a strike against the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, where 7 leaders from the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were killed. Among those 7 that were killed was Lieutenant General Zahedi, who is the highest-ranking Iranian military commander to be killed since Qasem Soleimani was killed in a U.S. drone strike back in 2020. And we've talked about this in a couple previous videos. When Soleimani was killed in that U.S. drone strike, it was a major event. They still talk about it regularly. A lot of the Iranian-associated groups across the Middle East still regularly talk about that event. The response to that was a missile attack from Iranian territory against U.S. bases in Iraq. So we've been expecting something very similar, where this was not going to be an attack carried out by proxy forces across the region like the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, not really in a position to do anything at this point, or other militias across Iraq and Syria. A lot of folks, and again, something we've talked about here, we've been watching Iran to see what Iran is going to do. They had to show that they were the ones responding to this attack, and that's, of course, what played out overnight. So looking at the actual strike that occurred, the majority of these drones and missiles were intercepted outside of Israeli airspace with fewer than 10 total impacts on Israeli soil, which is notable. That is a very, very successful night for Israeli air defense. It does sound like, unfortunately, one young Israeli girl was wounded in this attack severely. It sounds like she's undergoing medical treatment at this time. Looking at some statements from the IDF spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, he said 99% of the 300 or so projectiles fired by Iran and Israel overnight were intercepted by air defenses. I've seen a slight variation in that total number there. I haven't seen anything below 300 at this point. I've seen it as high as 331. Hagari says that Iran launched 170 drones at Israel. Not one of those drones entered Israeli airspace. They were all downed outside of the country's borders by Israel and its allies. More on that in a second. This was not just Israel shooting these drones and missiles down. He says another 30 cruise missiles were launched, and not a single one entered Israeli airspace. 25 of them were downed by the Israeli Air Force. He says that Iran fired 120 ballistic missiles at Israel. Some of the missiles managed to bypass Israel's defenses, hitting the Nevatim air base in southern Israel. It sounds like there might have been some slight damage to infrastructure at that air base. However, this video that I'll pull up here was released by Israel just in the last couple hours, showing some of the aircraft returning to that base after intercepting a handful of Iranian drones and missiles. So it sounds like the base is still operational, although they're...
So that was basically what happened in a nutshell. Again, fantastic channel to follow. Link is going to be in the description box below. And since this, I have seen some tweets where the Iranian leaders came out and said that, okay, like, you guys did this, we retaliated, and this retaliation was a success. I don't know how they're selling this as a success, because 99% of the 99.999% of what was shot was downed even before they reached Israeli territory. But they basically said that we're not planning to do anything more unless you you commit something, right? So it felt like that by their people, like they had to do something to show that they cared. They did something, and luckily it didn't have consequences. There was only one person that was injured, but that's it. Like, they're not going to do more if there is no further escalation, and this is where we stand. So how is the stock market going to react to this? I don't know. A lot of things can happen. Normally the market doesn't like uncertainty. It looked like, I saw a lot of tweets, just as it was happening, that, stocks are really going to tank. Bitcoin was falling like crazy, which, by the way, is very curious to me, because Bitcoin is supposed to be, this safety hedge, and why is it the one that is falling the most when these things happen? So, not a fan of Bitcoin. I'm not a holder of Bitcoin. It's just curious to me. Since then, I do think it's a good proxy to see, because Bitcoin is open while the general markets are closed. So again, most probably there is going to be some red. My guess would be about between a 1 to 2% day on the general markets. This was Bitcoin's reaction. It's a minus 4.65% day on Saturday, and you can see there's a big wick on this candle. So maybe at one point it was done 10+%, and since then you can see that the price has rebounded, and the dip, the wick you can see here, is being bought up. So that's for the general market. Now let's see our beloved stocks. Now, Palantir is sitting at a support line. It does feel like it's having a very hard time to go below $22. The RSI is quite low. This is very, very short-term prediction. And normally I don't care about these. My honest opinion is that it could be that this stock drops with all the other stocks just because the market is dropping. When the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, let me see if I can find that candle. It was in 2022 February. It's this candle. So the market opened something like minus, 8 to 10%, if I remember well. And that didn't make any sense to me, right? At that time, I think this was also when I made a buy on Palantir. So it was corrected during the same day, and the day ended on 13% plus. I do believe that this is a slight catalyst for Palantir, because probably they're going to be used very heavily in Israel and in the allied countries. Probably, just so you know, shooting down this many drones and missiles, it was a lot of coordination between satellites, different armies. You had to, the drones that Iran was sending, they were very slow moving drones. This is also, by the way, why it felt like it was a very empty threat, because Iran was like, we are striking you, but our drones are coming in 10 hours, because it took They were max going by 150 miles per hour, something like this. And it just took 8 hours to even come to Israel. So that means that everyone knew that these things were coming, and, you know, all the defense and everything could get ready. And this is really a Palantirian problem when you have to sync all the data together and you have to figure out what is the best response, where do you have resources. And I'm quite sure Palantir was heavily involved in this. And I think that this is going to lead to new contracts, increased attention on military spending. I don't think that this is going to be a mega catalyst, but it's definitely not hurting Palantir. We are doing insanely well on commercial, and I think that earnings are soon. That's also where the focus is going to be. How is commercial doing? We know that it's doing really amazing. The question is how amazing. Government was growing much slower. Maybe now that growth is going to be a little bit faster. So my honest opinion is if we have a dip tomorrow, it's definitely a buy the dip opportunity. It doesn't make sense that Palantir would drop with all the other stocks on this news. And yeah, you know, I'm a long-term investor. On the long term, if you buy Palantir at this price, you're going to be fine. If it dips and you buy it, you're still going to be fine. And if it goes up and you buy it, you're still going to be fine, given a long enough time horizon. So now the next one, Rocket Lab. This one is interesting because probably if there's a hit, you know, the small caps are going to be hit more, and Rocket Lab happens to be a small cap. I am really curious on how much more we can go down. We're near all-time lows. I highly don't anticipate that the all-time lows are going to be broken. And I do believe that this news is a slight catalyst also for Rocket Lab, despite it's being grouped together with all the other small cap stocks. There is military satellites that need to go up that have just become even more important. You know, there is Tehran has or Iran is working on nukes. You know, you need to be able to intersect those nukes. Those are done with maybe haste missions, maybe new technologies that need to be developed. And yeah, I think that this is going to be, if the situation escalates, it's going to lead to more contracts for Rocket Lab. And again, if this stock dips, they have enough money for what they need. They're doing very good with their contracts. It potentially leads to, existing contracts. So they're probably going to print a 70% increase in their revenues this quarter. So I think if it dips, it's a buy the dip opportunity also on this stock. And these are the two stocks that I hold. Again, I don't know how the other, probably it's going to be a red day on Monday and then the market is going to forget about it. I hope that this video gave you a little bit of value. And if you found value in this, it would be very nice if you could consider supporting the channel by joining the YouTube membership or joining Patreon. And it's really mostly to support the channel. You buy me a coffee every month. You get access to the models that I use and some other cool stuff. But the most important thing, as always, is that you're subscribed and you keep watching. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.